Welcome to our MBA Tribe Talk number 9, R2 Applications Insights Bootcamp. And today our speaker will be Rajdeep Chimni. And this is Amarendra. I'm your co-host tonight, and I'm also your co-admin of MBA Tribe. And I'm handing it over to Ashita.
Hey guys, welcome back. It feels like season 2 of a series. So yeah, we had a break during the R1 applications, but feels so good to be hosting these again. And who better to start this with than Mr. Rajdeep. So yeah, I'll hand over to Akshay to introduce our speaker for tonight.
Hello, everyone. For those of you who know me, it's been a long time. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Akshay, and I'm also going to be one of your co-hosts for the night, for the day, wherever you're joining from. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for the session, Mr. Rajdeep Chimni. He is a Kellogg alumnus, and he's worked in tech before and after his MBA, after which he decided to start his own consulting firm called Admissions Gateway. So his firm is rated number 1, the consultancy firm in the world individually, and number 2 as a small firm on Poets and Points. And his firm also boasts of the most M7 admits and scholarships of any firm worldwide. So I think I can go on, but I would like to hand over control to Rajdeep and begin the session. So we're going to start off this session with an in-depth analysis of a profile that was not admitted to Booth. And Rajdeep will be analyzing the entire application and giving us key insights of what could have been better.
Okay, sure. Thanks for the introduction, folks, and welcome everybody who's here. So we will go through an application. The main idea is to sort of give you some key takeaways in terms of what you could improve. So of course, this is our application that's already been submitted. So a lot of work has already gone into it. And we'll just see what the deltas are. So then you can apply them in your journey in the next 50 days going forward. Could you share the application on screen and then we can... Okay, so firstly, thanks to the person who sort of provided the application, because it allows a lot of other people to sort of learn from it. The main idea here is that we'll go through some tactical stuff and then we'll go through some more strategic stuff as well in terms of improvement. So quickly to just run you through the profile. The person is an engineer who worked in an EPC operations role. Now they work in their own family business in EPC, and the GMAT score is 710, and I think the GPA is about 7.7. Right. So the first thing to do is, like, before you start applying, you should take stock of your parameters and how you feel they line up in terms of the school. And in this, you should be fairly honest with yourself, because currently you have only 50 days left. You may be having to make some trade-offs in terms of which schools you apply to, and with, like, maybe you can do 4 schools, or maximum, if you're very fast, 5 schools from now. But typically people would probably do maybe 3 schools well. So it depends on your speed also. So here with a 710 GMAT, again, Indian passport holder, 7.7 GPA engineering, and then about 3 years plus in EPC. So given this profile, you would typically say that Booth is a REIT school. And typically for Indian men, more so, the GMAT score requirements are very high. Similarly for Indian women, and then for different demographics, the GMAT score may change. So the first thing here is that you would look at possibly improving your quantitative side. It can be done in 2 ways. Either you retake the GMAT and you aim to get 730, 740, or you build an alternate transcript through doing some pre-MBA coursework like mbamat.com, etc. So the first sort of tactical thing here is that you may want to look at taking the GMAT again if you're looking to apply to the M7, because getting into the M7 with a 710 happens, but it happens infrequently. Uh, the next step is the resume. Do you want to take any questions on GMAT scores and school selection and things like that, or should I carry on?
Yeah, I think you can go on for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next step is the resume. So one thing that's very important is understanding the difference between a resume and a job responsibility sheet or a job description. So this resume is a mixture. In some places, it shows the potential of being a resume, but mostly it is a job description. I'm just going to read out a couple of points. Directed and coordinated delivery of first of its kind critical high pressure, high temperature helium valves in India. So this is basically a action or a responsibility that the person had. Coordinated and earned qualification from CERN, again, it's sort of an action. So these are not very strategic points. They are just job descriptions. So we come to successfully managed and delivered the first of its kind ammonia vacuum charging facility in India, inaugurated by a distinguished scientist for contributing to the Make in India program. This sounds better than the previous points, but this point is also just a job description. Now, what is the difference? The difference is basically, as a reader, I don't understand what ammonia vacuum charging facility is or is meant to do. Secondly, I don't understand if this was live or if this was not live. What is the difference? I also don't understand how it contributes to the Make in India program. So overall, I don't understand anything at a strategic level in terms of why this was required, why it's a big deal, if it's happened, what has changed, if it hadn't happened, then what would have been the difference, right? So this is a job responsibility. Typically, if you look at a resume bullet point, you would write that in the star format: situation, task, action, result. And we use situation, action, and result because the task and action is very similar. So here, whatever is the situation that you need ammonia vacuum charging facility, we don't understand that because you haven't told us. The action is that you managed and delivered something, and the result is we don't know. So the result is not that it was delivered. The result is that if it is delivered and if it is working, then what is the result? Does it allow for some cost side result? Does it allow for some introduction of new type of offerings or P&L side result, etc. So I don't know exactly because I haven't talked to this person, but typically you would say that what is written here is a very tactical point and it is not strategic. So that's the overall flow of the whole resume actually. One point that you can say is sort of like a resume bullet point is spearheaded overall business development activities involving developing alternative verticals, new target markets, thereby achieving a year-on-year growth of 15% in overall revenue. So you can say this point, business development, is a resume bullet point. More or less everything below that is not. One other thing that stands out here is that if you look at the designation, it's board member and senior business development manager. So these are very heavy designations. And if you have a very heavy designation, heavy as in big sounding, then you need to have a heavy resume as well. But basically, here's a board member who says, hey, listen, you know, we did something. Well, some points are okay, like we recruited a team, we led a team as part of a CSR initiative, but it doesn't sound so much like a senior manager or a board member. The strategic thinking is not there. And basically, if I try to figure out that what is this EPC business, what do they provide, who do they provide it to, uh, what are their budgets, what is their sourcing, what is their procurement, what is the P&L, what is the growth, then I am not able to do that so well from here, right? So the resume you would start from scratch and you would think about more of a strategic approach to it than a tactical approach to it, and you would write it in a star format. Scroll down to the bottom. Okay, here also just a few things. like the volunteering experience, right? So you say headed and organized plastic-free drive for Rotary International. Okay. But this is again just a task. We don't know exactly what happened, right? Similarly, you talk about my loss rescue. Okay, so again, we don't know what the quantum is, right? So these are not, again, they're not results oriented so much. The last section is fine. You can have it if you want. Typically, you don't want a massive block where you've written 20 things. So if you want to make a bullet point about travel to 15 countries, etc., maybe you can make a few bullet points, but typically you wouldn't have a section like this that has a lot of additional information in sort of short snippets. So that's it for the resume. Overall, I would say this resume, if you want like a more benchmark, you would say it is maybe a 4 on 10, and it is a starting point from where you would actually start thinking more deeply about your job and sort of the outcomes of your actions. And you would try to be more strategic at a company level in terms of what difference you are making to the company's growth. And because you're a board member and a senior business development manager, that means you would be very close to the overall growth of the company. So your resume effectively would be very much like a, well, board member is a very strategic type position. But in terms of the business development, senior business development manager, like you're looking at making a much more strategic resume. If you are, let us say, in a software engineer role in um, TCS, or let us say you are very early starting out in a EPC company, Bechtel or something, and you have this kind of resume with about 2 years of experience, it's fine. But at that point, your designation will be like analyst or something, right? It will not be a senior business development manager. So the resume needs to live up to sort of the designation and sort of the leadership and maturity that the designation is talking about. I'll open up to questions on this section. Or
I think we can, for now, we can go ahead with the essays, and then once you're done with the essays itself,
sure.
then we have a couple of questions that the moderators would like to ask.
Before going to the resume, just one thing is that from the formatting and the style and all, like these are resumes that they have been worked upon. So somebody has advised on it and somebody has built it, and there would be iterations and all this. So that process is fine. You are iterating, etc. But basically, the thinking is not there. Like if you just keep iterating this resume, it doesn't improve. You have to go to scratch and say, hey, listen, these are the main things in the business. These are the new business lines. This is sort of our BD. This is our sales strategy. Okay, this is our operational strategy, client satisfaction, NPS. We look at it in this way. These are the engagements that we are doing. So it's a total rewrite. Like if you just keep iterating this, from 4 it'll become 4.8. So structurally, when you make your resume, you should be strategically clear on what you're doing, not be tactically stuck. Because otherwise, like this resume, if you improve, so you'll reach a 5, but you won't reach a 8. So you have to break it down and start from scratch. We can go to the essays. One last thing on the resume. The resume to some people may look fine actually, because of course it's been worked upon. And that's the tricky part. You feel it's sort of okay, but when you start breaking it down, it's not okay. And that is the delta that would sort of get you into a whatever, Duke or a Ross or a Tuck or a Kellogg or a Booth or Harvard or whatever, right? So it's not that the resume is, firstly, the resume is a description of your work. So it doesn't go to the underlying work being good or bad. It goes to whether you're able to present that underlying work. So some people's underlying work is 6 on 10 and they are able to show it very well. They get 6 on 10, 100% coverage. Some people have the potential of showing 9 on 10, but they show 4. So now they have got less than 50% coverage, right? So it's about coverage also. You can go to the essays. Okay, so in terms of the essays, first we'll just look at the goals. Now, in this case, the person worked in EPC and then they went into their own family business, which is also EPC. So the short-term goal is to go into consulting in sustainability and energy transition at McKinsey or LEK. So this goal is fine. Basically, what they're saying is, "Hey, listen, we'll go into consulting. We'll get a broader coverage of the space. We'll advise clients operationally, and we'll build that skill set. Then we'll come back to our business, right?" Uh, the things that can be improved in the goals are that you can be much more specific about what you will do in consulting. You can go to the sustainability page of McKinsey and see what all they do. And then you can pick out what type of projects you would be interested in or themes of consulting you would be interested in, add those. The long-term goal is a little weak because basically it says that you'll come and lead a vertical, but there is no vision in terms of what that vertical will do or what will happen or what is the end goal. So structurally, these goals are fine and there's nothing wrong, but they're not thought out to the level where they're very specific. So you can improve those particular things about these goals. Then we go to the Booth MBA essay. Can you give me a word limit on the essay?
So the limit was 250 words minimum for both the words.
Yeah,
And I think
but
both these essays are somewhere around 780, 790.
okay, so that's the first thing. See, typically a couple of years back, Booth had a 500 word limit. Now they have said, hey, listen, 250 word minimum. But basically, what's happened is from 500 words, they went to 250 minimum. So they're basically saying, hey, listen, you can write less if you want. They're not so much saying, hey, listen, write as much as you want. So in that sense, 780 words per essay is a little over. Like a Wharton essay would be 500 words, a Columbia essay would be 500 words. So I think the sweet spot of this essay is somewhere in the 475 to 550 words. If you stretch to 600, it's not a big deal. But if you start going more into 700, 800, it becomes like it's much heavier than any other essay that you've written. Even a Howard essay is only 900 words. So here you're touching almost 800. That's the first observation. Now, in terms of the first essay, the person starts with talking about their professional background, which you can do. However, you need to bring out some nuance out of it. Like basically, what the person says is that I've worn many hats, and then they say, hey, listen, here are some uh, international exposure. Here's some. Um, sure, so it's okay. The first two paragraphs are okay. You're trying to talk about your background, but basically, you can do a much better job of the skills that you have uh, gained. Those are a little different from what you have done. Also, you can have a more interesting start. So what that means is, in the start is I have spent the last 6 years of my professional career in engineering, right? So let us say if I was in healthcare, I would start with somebody who's complaining that they have to travel 100 kilometers to get medical care. And then I would go and say what is the medical care situation in India and why that's a problem. So this is not an anecdotal start. In that way, it's a little dull in terms of the reading. Like those people have to read thousands of essays, right? So that way, the start is very, you can say it's very resume type. Hey, listen, I did AB, I did this, I did this. And then you come to the goals, which is below, which is also above. That's fine. Just scroll down. I think the main thing in this essay is that you need to be able to talk about the skills that you need for your goals. So currently, like the person has good research. They talk about the Polsky Small Business Growth Group. They talk about lead if you go below. So they have decent research, but there are a couple of things. One is that it's not very clear on the skills that you need. So if you are going to become a consultant, so what are the skills that you need? So here he says, so there are no skills, right? It's just more like, hey, listen, actionable insights. I'll work in the consulting lab. I'll apply theory. But it doesn't showcase that the person understands what are the skills that a consultant needs, right? For example, a skill that a product manager might need is um, pricing strategy. That's a later on skill, but before that, maybe consumer research. That's ahead of the funnel. So maybe he needs consumer strategy. Then when everything's done, maybe they need pricing strategy, etc. So this doesn't show those skills. Just go down a little. Now, again, if you're coming to head a sustainable energy vertical, what are the skills that you would need to head that? So that question is not answered. What is more answered is that, okay, you will come back and you will play a pivotal role, etc. But the goals are already above. Like we looked at those 250 character things. Those were the goals, right? So this is more a repeat of the goals, but not adding any additional insight into what are the skills that you would need to run this vertical. Those can be uh, strategy skills, they can be people skills, they can be org skills, they can be financial skills, P&L skills, etc., etc. I just go down a little bit more. Now the person talks about lead and the Chicago approach, but here it is almost as if the person is giving a presentation on what booth is. So they say, listen, in lead, uh, curriculum can be customized. Only lead is required, so curriculum can be customized. Chicago approach, transformative development, multidisciplinary framework, transcends conventional learning with modern business. It's as if they are a booth rep and they are pitching to you. It's not as if they are writing their own application.
I think there is some
You know,
disconnection.
so that is the issue here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Your voice is breaking, Rajdeep.
Yeah, I think it was a little choppy. If you
Yeah.
could repeat the last 30 seconds.
Hear me now?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Chuck. I think
I
the
think
video is Chuck again.
we've lost you again.
Oh, okay, sorry. It must be my connection. Okay, whatever. Okay, any better?
Yeah, perfect now.
Okay. Okay, so what I was saying was that this paragraph on lead and Chicago approach is more like a marketing paragraph that both would come and say in a admission session. But this has got nothing to do with your application. Like what you're supposed to do is talk about how you will use the Chicago approach or how the Chicago approach maps into you. You're not supposed to describe what the Chicago approach is, right? So this whole paragraph is more like a marketing pitch that Booth would give everybody, but it's not so much a part of your application. The last thing is about the paid forward culture. Um, and that's fine. You can end with a more softer note if you like. However, at the end of the day, from this essay to sum up, I haven't really understood what are the key skills that you want from an MBA, and also I haven't understood how Booth will help you. Why I can't understand the second is because the skills are not there. Uh, sure, like something like navigate complex business environments with empathy. Sure, maybe that is a skill, but there's not enough in there to for me to understand how you want to be a better consultant, and for me to understand what are the challenges you will face in running a EPC company and what are the skills that you want to develop towards that. So again, it's the kind of essay that maybe looks okay, but again, I would put it more in the 4 to 5 zone. Also, the networking can be better. Like some people are mentioned towards the end, but they are not mentioned in terms of specific skill sets or specific experiential programs or any anecdotes in terms of the learning philosophy or in terms of the leadership philosophy. They're more mentioned as a token in the end. So that is more a mention just to mention. It doesn't have as much value as a mention that brings actual insight about how a particular experiential program is or how somebody developed their style of leadership that you're interested in and things like that. We can go to essay 2. Okay, so essay 2 is a little bit about who you are. So this complements the first essay. The first essay is more about goals and your professional life. This essay is more about your values, your extracurriculars, your motivations, your uh, upbringing, and things like that. Now, here the person talks about some hardship that they've gone through, and that is fine. And they basically talk about how they're able to overcome challenges because of that. So I think that's fine. It's stronger if you have actioned something. What that means is if I'm diabetic and I have built a community of where diabetics can come and get information and support each other, then I've actioned upon some hardship that I had and I have impacted other people. So that is stronger. But if you have not done that, then you can improve your reflection on how your hardship helped you grow. So in that reflection, the easiest thing to write would be that, oh, it made me resilient and I overcame challenges. In that sense, this is first level introspection. You can have much deeper introspection of how it sort of helped you grow, right? Just scroll down a little bit more. Now, here we talk about, so again, we carry on and we say that, okay, we were able to make the football team, etc. And then from there, we move more on to professional achievements and all this. But basically, before you start writing an essay, you should think about what are the things that you want to tell in that essay. For example, the things that are in this essay seems to be overcoming hardship, but that is also the second paragraph is also overcoming hardship only mostly. Um, and then we go to community and supporting some causes. And then in the bottom, there'll be a third thing. So typically for 700-800 words, I think it's not that you would just cover 2 or 3 values. You have, even in 500 words, you have a lot of space to cover a lot of values. Now, values can be simple. Like, for example, this is more of an American example, but let us say somebody says, hey, listen, growing up, we lived more on a farm, big family. So effectively, we used to do all the cooking, cleaning up after cooking, and then only when we used to be able to wrap up the whole kitchen and all, then we used to be allowed to see TV for 30 minutes. Now, there's nothing great in this. But basically, what the person is doing is they're putting a very simple picture of collaboration and teamwork and how they were shaped in that way since they were 7, 8 years old. So you don't need rocket science or big things to write in the essay. You can even take small things and showcase the values out of those small things, right? Just scroll down a little bit more. Yeah, so the other thing you can think about is all paragraphs in this essay do not need to be totally delinked. Like you should try to formulate a story. Currently, how it goes is somebody says, I overcame a personal hardship. Then they say, hey, listen, I like to give back. And then they say, I'm an explorer. So there is no thread or journey. It's like everything is a different thing. It's like one third, one third, one third, right? But overall, again, I think this essay is something that if you introspect and if you like, they can be very values like empathy, enablement, of course, resilience, ethics, transparency. There could be many, many values. So there's not enough thinking here in terms of, hey, listen, what should I write? It seems more like somebody looked at the resume and said, okay, uh, why don't you write about your extracurriculars? And okay, you traveled and also you can write about that. So these essays don't have enough formulation. Formulation is two things. One is what are the components of the essay? So, like somebody says, hey, listen, I want to talk about how I had to work through college because uh, my father was not well. So this is a thing that you can talk about. But like this, you would identify the things that you want to talk about first. Then you would come to, okay, if I want to talk about the fact that I had to work through college, then what do I want to say about that? Like, it's not just that, oh, I worked through college. Like, what's the point? What is the values? How did it change my thinking? And that's the second step, right? If you scroll down now, you will have some contributions. That is optional. Both doesn't ask you for contributions, they ask you for who you are. So it would be better for you to spend most of your time describing who you are and showcasing your values and not putting 70, 80 words into what you can contribute. If you want to, you can. But basically, this essay ends in a strange way. It says, hey, listen, I can do outdoor club, soccer club. Question is, who are you? And we are ending with all these things. If you want to put contributions, maybe you can put them more in line. That is when you talk about uh, NGO work. At that point, you can talk about board fellows or something, whatever. But even that has a problem. It breaks the flow of the essay. So I would just focus on telling my story and who I am and not bother so much about putting in extra contributions and things like that. So overall, to sum up, I think here, basically, given the quantitative side, both was a read school. I think the goals are fine, but can be more detailed. The resume needs more of a overhaul, and it needs to be much more strategic because you are in a senior position. And the first essay needs to have a better understanding of the skills you need, also needs better networking and anecdotes for both. The second essay needs a much better understanding of what you want to tell about yourself and your experiences. Currently, it's a little simplistic in terms of overcoming a challenge and then, okay, I do NGO work and I've explored. Typically, most people would do NGO work. So your second dimension is something that everybody would write. And typically, most people would have also traveled. So in that, there's not much uniqueness apart from the personal challenge that the person talks about. That is where they own the story a little bit. But other than that, it is pretty normal in terms of anybody can be writing the second and third thing. So given that it was a read school and given that the application is 5 on 10, it doesn't add up. Like for read school, you would need a 9.5 on 10 application. So if you're applying to a safety school and you have a 7 on 10 application, I think it's good. If you're applying to a reach and you have a 7 on 10, then of course that doesn't work. Any questions? We can open up for questions or next step.
Yeah, so we will get to the questions in the chat in a bit. So there are a few other questions that we had compiled beforehand. Sure. We would like to ask your take on. So firstly, in the essays, so a lot of applicants tend to name drop students or professors, etc. And there were some names that were dropped in these essays as well. So is there a strategy about going effectively name dropping, or does that impact the application in any way at all in the first place?
Okay, the name itself does not have any value, right? It is basically what you say after the name. So if you are quoting somebody and they're giving you very deep insight into a certain philosophy or a certain class or a certain experience, then it makes sense. But if you just say like Mark recommended technology strategy, then it has no value as such. So the idea of name dropping is not important. The idea is that if you have talked to somebody, then they are able to explain what lead is better than what you know because you're not attended and they have. As long as you're bringing out the value, then the name makes sense. If you're just dropping the name, then it doesn't add much value there.
Got it. I think that's fair. So the next question is, so based on the application that we've all understood right now, how much connect do you see with both and the applicant's profile in terms of the values that they look for, or just the culture that they look for in a potential candidate? And what could have been improved there?
Yeah, so okay, that's majorly what we discussed. See, in essay one, I think it's not values, but basically you need to be able to establish the skills that you need from the MBA clearly. Of course, those skills are all dependent on the job that you want. So everybody's skill set will be dependent on the job. So that's not done very well here. There are some booth specific things like the person has written that, okay, there's only one core curriculum class, so there's flexibility, but the person doesn't explain how that flexibility benefits them particularly. The Chicago approach is written more as a description of what it is, but again, not more in terms of why it's good for me or why it is good for an entrepreneur. So all these tweaks can be made. In terms of the values, that's more the second essay. There, I think resilience, giving back, and exploration is not deep enough introspection. Like if I had to come up with these values, I can come up with them in 10 minutes. But if you're thinking for a month for your essay, you should be able to come up with much deeper things. Specific values that Booth is looking for, that Kellogg is not looking for, that Wharton is looking for. Those are the same core values that more or less everybody is looking for. But the depth of the values can be more, yeah.
Thank you. Amar, would you like to ask the next question?
Yeah, so one of the questions that popped up in the chat was, what if the score was like 750 or 740, 750 plus? So how would that change the whole ball game? I mean, you rated like 4 to 5. This application has 4 to 5 out of 10. So how would that change in terms of your opinion?
Well, okay, if you had a 750 and you did this application, you can say your chances of getting in are more than if you have a 710 and this application. But most likely, I think even with 750, you would need to be very lucky to get in with this application. So the 750 would create a sufficiency on the quantitative side, but the application would still be deficient on the qualitative side. There are too many people in the world with a 750 to think that only the GMAT score will get you in. Even with 780 and this application, most likely you may not get in. As you go lower in schools, maybe a 780 can help you get into a Carnegie Mellon or a UT Austin or a UCLA, and there the score has a great value. But as you go to the higher schools, the score is still needed, but it is not that prominent. The overall story uh, carries sort of more weight. So if you just change the 710 for a 750 and do the same thing, I still think maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but maybe best case you get waitlisted. But it's tough to get in because it's not clear what you want from the MBA. It's not clear exactly what you are telling in terms of who you are and what is the differentiation there. The resume is not very sort of built out. Your designation sounds very heavy, but the maturity in the resume doesn't make you sound like that. So there are many other issues, not just the GMAT, but the GMAT compounds it. Like it's difficult to get into a M7 with a 710. Though for caveat is for Indians and Chinese where they're oversubscribed populations. Depending on the demographic, even 580 is fine. But in this case, we're talking about an Indian profile, so that GMAT score is a little low. Yeah.
Okay, so my next question is, so in the second essay, the applicant is referring to self in third person on multiple occasions. So, do you think that is the right way to go, or should a person not
Yeah.
do that?
So actually, I had that in mind, but I missed speaking it out. So that to me is a little strange. Like if you read it, it gives you this. Yeah, the third person voice is not okay. It's sort of, and in some places, it makes you feel like the person is talking about not themselves. Like it's a strange thing to say, but when they start talking about the Chicago approach, it just seems like they're presenting the approach. It's got nothing to do with them. So the third person doesn't work. You would say more, I am like this. Like you wouldn't say the applicant's motivation stems from the fact that his father had to overcome a hardship. You'd say my father overcame a hardship and that provides me inspiration to sort of do my best in challenging times. Like you'd speak, that would be normal, right? Third person would be a little strange, yeah. Uh,
Amal,
muted.
you're on mute.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So my next question is, so there were so many elements that have been, as you said, that underutilized. So can you just mention a few that could have been like more overemphasized and would have brought more value in the same profile?
Okay, so then you'll have to go up to the resume a little bit. Okay, this I'm just going to take a crack at it. This is basically what a consultant is supposed to do with you over a week. So I don't know, like in 5 minutes, I can't say, hey, listen, is this thing. But here, okay, if you say you're a board member, it doesn't quite come out that you have any understanding of the strategic direction of the company. So if you were just a junior BD manager, you could still say the same thing. So the whole idea that it is your family business and you're a board member and all that, that delta doesn't quite come out. Right. So on the professional front, like you can just simply make a much more better resume. The other thing is the SBD. Well, what are they like? Applied flow technology, ammonia vacuum charging facility. That engineering mindset is still very strong, though the person is trying to show some business acumen, but I don't think the business acumen comes out so much. Um, on the other side, sure, if you have a lot of extracurriculars, you can think about like you have to tread, which means that if I have done a lot of extracurriculars where I have been engaged in mentoring women or helping women entrepreneurs, etc., then diversity and inclusion would become a pillar, and then I would write about that. What is my motivation? What do I feel about DEI? How I've promoted DEI. So here, I don't think the person has sat back and thought about what are the key talking points. Um, so all those things can be done, but basically the question that you're asking is more that what the consultant is supposed to do over a month. So it's sort of hard to do in 5 minutes. Yeah. Like here's what there is a point here about women empowerment initiatives in terms of recruiting. If we go down and we see that the person has also helped women social entrepreneurs with a weaving business, then these two things would become a thread. And you would say, hey, listen, uh, there is some aspect of DEI, and let us see how we are going to utilize that. So that way, you have to understand your threads before you start writing. Yeah. One just an observation here is that there is no overarching, very strong extracurricular. It's a bunch of small things done over a few months, etc. So in my mind, it is just enough for somebody to show that, hey, listen, I do some volunteering. But if I go to the essay and the person says that one of the dimensions of my value system is community, and that is one of the three things I'm going to tell you, then when I come here, it seems very weak. Like this much extracurriculars everybody will have. Maybe the Milos rescue thing is the biggest thing, that is 2 years. But overall, when you say something, then your background should add up to that. So if I'm a woman who has worked in rural areas and built frontline worker capability over the last 3 years, and I say that to me, grassroots healthcare is very important, it makes sense. Uh, so it should be equivalent. Other question?
Akshay.
Yeah. I think now that we've addressed a few questions and we've done a particular application, so this is more for the general crowd as well. What sort of pitfalls do you think we would face as we move to the round two applications, and how do we avoid them so that we don't end up on the wrong side of things?
Okay, so the first thing, I'll go through some general ones. The first thing is time management. Like by now, you should be cognizant of the fact that you have 50 to 60 days and you should be able to assess how much work you can do. So somebody says, okay, I can do 5 schools, then they can plan accordingly for 5 schools. If somebody says I can do three, then they can plan accordingly. What's the difference? If I'm doing five, then I can throw in a couple of long shots because I'm doing the three where I think I will do well and I'm taking a couple of shots. If I'm doing only three, then I can't throw in a couple of long shots because if they don't work, then I'll be left with nothing. So this is the first thing that you should assess. How many schools can you do? And then you should have a more strategic approach to your school selection. If you can do more schools, you can be more bullish on school selection. If you are doing lesser schools, then maybe you need to be a little more circumspect. If you are of the opinion that you will just take shots and you don't really care whether you get in or not, then you can just go for it. So it depends on, like, you need to have a strategy dependent on what you're thinking and the time you have for execution. Second thing is now you should be able to tell what is the difference between a resume and a job description. And you should start moving your resumes more towards resumes if they are more like job descriptions currently. Third thing is you should understand your goals, but more importantly, you should understand the skills that you want from your MBA. Next thing is you should be able to research those MBA programs firsthand and be able to say something other than what somebody can just find on the website and write in 2 days. And fourth thing is your your introspection in terms of what you want to say from the personal side, which is basically what brings you more to life. So these are the main things that you would look at now over the next 50 odd days. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. So just a couple of questions before we move on to the questions in the chat. And Ashita will be taking that section over. So one is, since you did mention about the research for the schools and also about the school. So it's a two-part question. So firstly, how does one go about doing school-specific research, considering the fact that there is admission sessions, there's the website, there's talking to students, etc. And how do you exactly find what you want to articulate about your application? And secondly, on those lines, how do you go about networking before the MBA to get the maximum information out of the alums and the current students?
Okay. So the second is networking. The first one was?
School specific research. Is there a tried and tested way to optimize that?
Okay. So what I would do is not all schools need school research before applying. For example, Kellogg doesn't need any school research before applying. You just need to understand Kellogg culture and philosophy, but you don't need to understand anything about classes, experiential programs, or anything like that because there is no essay on goals. However, Booth does need school specific. Again, Harvard doesn't, Stanford does, right? So it depends on the essay actually. So you shouldn't be doing school specific research for where you don't need to use it. That you can do before your interview then. So of course, somebody can ask you why Kellogg, but not in your application. That's only when once you get the interview. So in terms of the school research, you would mostly be trying to figure out the skills and how the school will help you get to that skill set. In that, maybe there is some theoretical aspect of it, which is a class. And maybe there's a experiential aspect of that, which is like a business plan competition or a career trek or something like this, right? In terms of outreach, you can reach out to specific clubs, and on the club web pages, they would have the academic head, the vice presidents, prize co-chairs, all that stuff. So you can reach out to them, um, LinkedIn, through your network and things like this. The only thing in terms of reaching out is you should reach out with specific questions. So if somebody says, "Hey, listen, I'm looking at the gym at Kellogg, and I am very interested in going to gym in Brazil. Just wanted to understand how that whole thing is organized. And do you know anybody who's been on gym in Brazil?" Then it will not take me much time to give a name and answer. If somebody says, "Hey, listen, what is gym? How was it for you?" and all, then I'm not gonna answer because I don't have that kind of time. So you need to ask pertinent questions where people can quickly give you what they need, and so you have to do your own research before reaching out. You can look at YouTube videos, you can look at student blogs, you can take keywords like gym or lead, and you can Google and read what students are talking about, their experience in it, and things like this. So these type of things you can do for research.
Got it. Thank you. So one last question from my end before we move on to the questions from the chat. So that is about the side of the application that we did not see, which is the small short answer questions, the sections where they ask you about your extracurriculars, your achievements, etc. So what impact does that section have in the decision making process of the school?
Yeah, okay, so you can say that that is all deltas and hygiene, but you still need to do that properly. So you would extract value there as well. Of course, it's not as important as your main essays, etc. But sure, if I have an extracurricular section where I have a strong 5, 6 extracurriculars, the motivation and impact is spelled out. That's good. Like in Kellogg, if they ask for international experience and I have 4, 5 experiences of living abroad, working abroad, and I add what I've learned about some culture, or I add how it's changed me in terms of being more flexible, adaptable, or being more open to new ideas. So I can add value even in all those places in the application form. Those are all needed to be done, and they are all deltas. Of course, if you don't have good essays, the form is not going to save you. It's more just like if you're doing everything well, you do the form also well. Yeah.
Fair enough. So that's it from my end. I would like to ask Ashita to take over.
Thanks, Akshay. So we'll just quickly take some questions from the chat. First question is, do you think that the resume, is it like too cluttered? There's too much text on the resume in a sample application?
Well, so you can have a 2-line bullet point. So I think the bullet points are not that heavy except for this helium cooling system one. But I think the resume is a little text heavy because of the last section. There's a dump of many, many things in terms of shows and travel and everything. So that's like just like 100 words packed into very little space. So if you remove that section and then you're fine, more or less. Yeah.
Right. And then another question on resume that we have is how do we actually balance, depth versus breadth? Like, for example, if someone has had multiple promotions and if they still want to use the star format for each bullet point, like, the individual has asked, like, if they've had 6 designations. So how do they balance the resume essentially? Because they would need to mention each of the designation or promotion.
Okay, this you can discuss with your consultant. Typically, what I do is if I am junior analyst, senior analyst, I club that. Then if I'm consultant, senior consultant, I club that. So I show the designation, but they're just two sections. It's not that I'm not giving one line to each thing and then putting stuff below it. So I want to showcase my best stuff in a page. So in that way, it allows me to club three things and just show the best stuff. I don't have to put dummy lines for junior consultant just because I was there at that point and stuff like that.
Got it. We have a couple of questions asking like if a great GMAT or a GRE score can negate a low GPA, especially when you're applying to a top school.
Okay. Okay, let's say you have a 750 GMAT and a 3.2 GPA. This would mean that your GPA is not extremely low, but it is low because the average of the school may be 3.5. The GMAT will help you a little bit. The other stuff you can do is you can build an alternate transcript, and that you can do through online courses, mbamat.com, HBS score, and things like this. So you can be more proactive and you can build those alternative transcripts if your GPA is low.
Okay, great. Also, we had one more question that was submitted to us earlier, which was about what is the best way to use the optional essay? Like, what are the specific situations in which we should use the optional essay and when is it not advisable? Because almost all applications have that section.
Okay, so it depends on the wording of the optional essay. There are some optional essays that say, listen, this is only for mitigation. If it is only for mitigation, you can talk about a low GMAT, low GPA, gaps in your work experience, not having your boss as your recommender. You can even talk about things like failed grades, criminal record, etc. If it is a place where they say, is there anything else that you want to tell us? Then you can use your discretion. And if there is something like you have not written about an NGO that you're running, then sure, you can add a essay about your community consciousness and the NGO you run. But you have to be a little careful because if they have already given you 1,000 words above, then the question will become that why did you write that there? So that planning you can do with your consultant. Typically for a school like LBS, they have only one essay, and if you want to provide additional information, you can. For a school like Stanford, they have 6 essays, so there's nothing much left to say. So in this case, you won't. So it depends on the school also.
Right. Next question is how can we best portray your leadership and impact, especially for someone who's coming from a technical background?
Okay, for basically software engineers, you need to understand the P&L implications of the software, not the making of the software. So if I am a software developer that works on Amazon S3, the technical aspects of why cloud storage and all that are irrelevant. The aspect of how a security feature I built helped S3 get government contracts and what is the size of those government contracts, that is more relevant. So you need to be able to link your software development to the end business. So in that sense, you need to talk to your product manager and understand that, hey, listen, if we do these changes in the software, or if we introduce these features, so what happens in terms of our BD, sales, client satisfaction, etc.
Okay. Next question from our chat is how can one show strong extracurriculars when they have common hobbies such as traveling and art? Like there are a lot of people who love traveling. So how do we actually showcase that as in a unique way?
Yeah, for me, extracurriculars and hobbies are different things. What I mean by that is, like, I don't see traveling to be an extracurricular, right? Or even dance. If I dance becomes an extracurricular if I have done a lot of shows, or it becomes an extracurricular if I teach people dance. Um, but dancing, if I enjoy dancing, that's not an extracurricular. Travel becomes an extracurricular if I run a travel blog where I share my experiences of traveling and help people build itineraries of where they want to go and all. But if I just travel, it's 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 not an extracurricular. But to me, the idea of extracurricular is that something happens on somebody else, not only for me.
Got it. So, Rajdeep, I know it's already past 9 o'clock and we still have some questions left. So,
Sure.
just wanted to check with you, like, if we can extend it for a bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So, yeah, this is an interesting one from the chat. What is your high level 2 cents on applying to Kellogg? I mean, it's a broad question, but if you have any input over here.
Yes, the one thing is, see, Kellogg is a school that, again, it depends on the region. By the way, I see a lot of people from Nigeria. Even I used to live in Nigeria a long time back. So, like in Nigeria, we would interview almost everybody. In India, we would try to interview everybody, but we may not be able to interview everybody, Kellogg, because they don't have as many alums available. But one thing is that if you think that you are very good conversationally and a very good personality, then Kellogg is one school that is more likely to give you the chance to show that off. Whereas in other schools, if your GMAT is 700, they may not even call you for interview, right? So this is one main dynamic difference that Kellogg and some other schools give you sort of almost this pre-interview, and there your own who you are outside sort of the sheet of paper kicks in more. But otherwise, it's a top school, and it's a great experience. Like I think one difference between Kellogg and the other schools is sort of the student experience, and like with the infrastructure and everything right now, it's a great experience. And also the alumni communities are very tight knit, which every school says, but basically in terms of the actionability of that community actually helping you out, then it would be one of those top communities. So definitely, if you're applying to sort of the M7, Kellogg would be in there for me, based on the fact that it does everything that any other school does, but it adds more value on the people and the community side.
See,
Yeah, it's a broad one, but
yeah.
yeah, but you should apply. Yeah.
Next question from the chat is, should short-term goals show flexibility by mentioning an alternative option? Like, should we mention plan B or something in the short-term goals?
Yeah, okay. There are some schools that ask for plan B, so you should mention a plan B, but otherwise, no, because it basically then makes it look like you're in doubt of those goals. So at a school like Duke, where they ask for alternative goal, alternative path, sure, but otherwise, no, you should have one short-term goal. If you're, if you say something like, "Hey, listen, I would like to work in impact consulting at Bain's Social uh, or at a firm like Dalberg," these are also two different things. One is more like in a consulting firm in the social arm, the other is more an impact consulting firm, but they're close enough to write as a couple. So if they're close enough, it doesn't show hesitation. It shows more that you are understanding your various options within the same ambit. That's fine. But you can't give two goals. So, but yeah.
Another related question from the chat on the short-term goals is, when you're basically looking to pivot, like, make a major career shift or an industry shift, how can you actually substantiate that in your short-term goals essay? Because it may not necessarily relate to what you have been doing.
Yeah. So, okay, this is subjective, but and different people will have a different opinion on this. There's some pivots that you can make, like software engineer to investment banking, software engineer to consultant. And there's some pivots that maybe you can't make, like software engineer to venture capitalist, software engineer to asset management. So you should be aware of what pivots work and what don't work, and how you would be aware of them is by looking at the recruiting of the business school. If there are only 4 people going into asset management, then it's unlikely that a software engineer can pivot. Whereas if there are 180 people going into banking, then it's likely that you can pivot. You should be able to understand the skill sets that you possess and how they translate into skill sets for the next job. And then you can make that case. You should also be able to, like, if you are a software engineer who knows that you want to run a venture capitalist a venture capital firm, it would be strange because you have never done VC. Your motivations have to be clear. You can go into investment banking, you need to explain why you think you want to do that. As long as you are able to have transferable skill sets and able to talk about your motivation and numerically it works, that 100 people are recruiting, not just three, then it's fine.
Great. What Another question from the chat is what to keep in mind for people with experience close to 10 plus years?
Yeah, okay, so that's a tough one. Yeah. Age is a criteria, may or may not be, but typically, if you're 32 years old, you will see that in a class of 500, only 10 people may be 32, whereas 490 are not. So then you're playing for a very small segment of the class. Your resume needs to be much better because you have more experience. Your need for an MBA needs to be much better established. Your goals need to be much better. Like basically, since you have more maturity, they just expect more maturity and want to understand why at this stage you want to do an MBA. So it's possible to do one, but you would be in the minority. You can look at a 1 year program. You can look at some programs like LBS and INSEAD, that European programs are more open to more experience, HEC, etc. IE. And you can also look at some programs like IMD, which are more mid managerial level. So typical business school average would be 4.5 years, but at IMD you would have people even with 14 years. So maybe you need to look at a school selection a little bit.
Great. So we just have a couple of interesting anonymous questions, and we'll just close with those two. The first one is, what would you recommend the reapplicants? Like any specific strategy as compared to new applicants? How should they go about round two?
Well, basically, as a reapplicant, you would know what needs to be done. Like, let us say the profile that we reviewed today, if this person were to become a reapplicant, A, they would improve their GMAT score, try to get to 730, 740. B, they would totally overhaul their resume and try to make it more strategic and live up to their designation. And C, they would better understand the skills that they need from the MBA. They would do better networking with Booth and make it more anecdotal. And they would make be more reflective about their personal experiences and life experiences and what kind of values they have and how that will sort of add value to both community. So all these things they'll do. Apart from this, they'll write the optional essay, which will basically be a delta of the experiences and skill sets they've developed since applying last time. So it's basically everything we discussed plus the optional essay.
Got it. And the last question is, someone's just asked, like, if someone wants to work with you specifically and not someone from your team, like, how can they go about it?
Okay, so in terms of consultants at this point is very late, so they will not be many consultants who are able to help at this point. What we are doing is we do these essay boot camps. So on next weekend, we are doing a Kellogg essay boot camp, which will basically be a 3 hour webinar on terms of going into the Kellogg application and what to cover, how to cover it, and showcasing samples and showcasing how we would like what's good, what's better, and all that. So, and next to next weekend, we would be doing one for Wharton. So these are more low cost webinars, which basically tell you everything that you need to do to execute apps. These don't help you execute the app, but they will inform you with everything that you need to do it. So in that way, we don't have full consultation available this late. For that, we typically start in April or May. Yeah.
Okay, great. And for the next year, I mean, is there like a criteria that you have for working with applicants, like, or there's no such thing?
No, there's no criteria. Basically, if you're ready to apply, which would mean that you made up your mind to apply, it would also mean that you already have a GMAT score. Then you can reach out to us in Feb or March for next year, and at that point we start for round one. So at that point, it is more a first come first serve situation, and then we go from there. Yeah.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you so much for your time, Rajdeep. I mean, I know we overshot by a good 15 minutes or so, But really appreciate your time. I'm sure that it was pretty insightful for all the candidates, and I'm sure I learned a lot going into my round two. And I think it's going to be the same experience for everyone else as well.
Okay, I'm glad
Any
it helped.
closing remarks, Rajdeep?
Nothing. That's it. You have about 60 days. One thing I would do is I would start executing because many people spend a lot of time thinking, evaluating, and right now all that time is gone. So I would sort of just get to work, and then some of the things that we discussed today will help you work more at a more efficient level. And that's about it. If you're starting now and you're able to do 3 or 4 schools, you'll give yourself a good chance. So good luck with the apps and hope you all do well.
Thank you so much. Amal, Akshay, any closing remarks from you guys?
Thank you, Rajdeep, and I thank everyone, all the participants. I mean, we at the peak we had 100 plus participants, and but uh, unfortunately, only the max capacity of our Zoom room is 100, so only 100 could join. I thank everyone and who joined and who could not join. Also, I apologize to them. So thank you so much.
It was an absolute delight to see everyone after a two-month break in our sessions again. And I would like to thank Rajdeep again for doing this for the community, and for everyone who was out there hustling and giving it their everything for round two. Just know that you're not alone, and we're all in this together. And wishing everyone the best, and hoping to come out on the other side with flying colors. Thanks once again.
Okay. Good luck, everybody, and
Thanks,
hope you all
Rajdeep.
do well.
Thank you.
And I'll see you in the chat. Okay, take care.
Thank
Bye.
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye
See you,
bye.
folks.